Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's not talk about books yet. Yes, this is not heavy book week in terms of videos. This is Ladybird, by the way. But as part of the videos that I'm making to be posted during Latinx Heritage Month, I really wanted to do one talking about my use of the word Latinx. It's a little bit controversial, not a ton, but there is some debate about the use of this word, and I wanted to kind of explain where I'm coming from here. I've gotten some comments in videos. A lot of comments are really more trolling that is happening, with a few genuine comments, and those are the ones that I want to address here on why I use the word Latinx. So one of the first critiques of the word Latinx is that it doesn't make any sense in Spanish, and that is very, very true. It's really unpronounceable in Spanish with the X at the end. So the alternative that gets used among Spanish speakers is Latine, with an E at the end. Now, what is the point of doing this to begin with? Well, it is to be more inclusive, because the Spanish language is very gendered. Most things have either a masculine or a feminine gender, and that is extremely exclusive of non-binary people and of queer people. So the point of adding either an X or an E at the end of Latin is to be more exclusive, of queer folk that don't identify within the gender binary. Now, another common critique of the word Latinx is that it was invented by colonizers. Essentially, it was invented by white people in the US, and that it is not used in Latin America. And first of all, it was not invented by colonizers. It is something that emerged in the US, especially among Latinx queer people in the US, and the effort to include queer people into the definition of Latinidad, right? And so it was not invented by colonizers, but it is something that, the word Latinx with the X at the end is something that is primarily used by Latinos in the US, right? It is not a word that's very common outside. It is starting to be, there's a sprinkling of usage outside of the US, but Latin or Latine with the E at the end is the more common gender neutral way of using the word in Latin America or in the Spanish speaking world. There's an article by David Bowles that I will link down below that goes through the history of the word and why it gets used, right? It is a more recent development, and it's worth knowing a little bit of its history if you are interested in it. My experience with the word Latinx was that when I first heard it, it sounded really weird to me, and I was like, no. Like, it's already hard enough being an immigrant in the US from Latin America, trying to figure out where you belong without throwing a new one into the mix. That's how I felt at first, right? I had already gone through the whole process of trying to figure out what word I wanted to use to describe myself. I never liked the word Chicana or Chicano, or now it's used Chicanx, because to me that word comes out of a specific movement, a specific political movement that I did not associate myself with, that I did not feel that I belonged to, and it felt wrong for me to use those words. The word Hispanic, at first seemed really good, and then you learn a little bit about its history. It's a word that was invented by the Nixon administration to classify people from Latin America. So Hispanic is actually the colonizer word, and one that once you know the history, it's really just hard to use that word for me. And that's why, even though officially the month is called Hispanic Heritage Month in the US, you're going to hear a lot of people who are not using that word. So I had really settled on my identity as a Latina. I do identify as female, and so that seemed just like the most useful word for me. It had taken me a long process of coming up with that is the word that I want to use to describe myself. And so when Latinx started being used more, I really just kind of rejected it as, oh my God, no, I've already figured out my identity. The words I want to use to describe myself, you know, a new one did not sound good to me. But it was actually people in the book community that kind of allowed me to see how how useful the word was in practice. People using it to really be more inclusive, to include queerness in our definition of Latinidad, and using it really productively. That really just won me over. And so really it's only been in the last like 2 years that I started using the word Latinx consistently. In fact, even last year, I think I was saying the phrase Hispanic Heritage Month. And it's not until this year that I've really just completely embraced Latinx. I don't use it to identify myself. Like I say that I am Latina because I identify as female, but I use the word Latinx to signify people of Latin American heritage. And that includes queer people to me, and non-binary people. And so that is why I am using it, and that is what I mean by it. I am not forcing anybody else to use it. I feel like these words, because they deal so much with identity, if you don't identify with this word and you don't like being called it, then that is perfectly fine. I am not the Latinx police. I am not going around forcing anybody to use the word, and in fact, nobody is. I have not seen anybody trying to force anybody else to use this word. It's just an inclusive word that is being more used, and some people, when they see the inclusivity of it, automatically reject it. And I think it's because they don't want to include queerness in their definition of Latinidad, and I don't support that. If that is the reason why you don't want to use that, then I really don't bother leaving a comment down below. I just don't want anything to do with a Latinidad that is not inclusive. But I'm also not forcing people to use it, right? Like if you just don't want to use it, if you haven't come to terms with that phrasing, or it just does not fit, then it's fine. Like I said, I went through a whole process of interacting with that word before I decided to embrace it. And I think people should go through their own process of analyzing whether it's a word they want to use or not. And I think Latin or Latine is also a word that I would embrace. It would be more for me. It would be more when I'm speaking in Spanish, and oftentimes I'm just not speaking in Spanish when talking about some of these issues. So I really that's something that maybe I have to spend a little bit more time analyzing the vocabulary I use in Spanish and how to include Latine as part of it. But yeah, that is my explanation. I hope it clarifies a few things for people. I hope that this message is taken as it's meant, with a lot of love and inclusivity, and trying to be as understanding as possible. Again, I will leave some resources down below for people that want to dig a little bit more into some of this. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.